The 34th floor office overlooks Manhattan's financial district through floor-to-ceiling windows. Rain streaks the glass, distorting the city below into abstract impressions of light and shadow. John Matthews, 42, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, stands motionless before these windows, his reflection ghosted against the urban landscape. Behind him, his mahogany desk bears the weight of meticulously organized documents, contracts, financial projections, legal briefs. Each page represents months of negotiation, yet something in John's posture suggests uncertainty rather than triumph. John, to himself, 5 years of building this company, and it all comes down to this signature. The office door opens quietly. Maria Santos, 38, enters carrying a silver tray. Not just any housekeeper, but someone whose movements speak of careful observation and quiet intelligence. Her uniform is pristine, her manner professional, yet her dark eyes hold depths that suggest experiences far beyond domestic service. Maria, your coffee, Mr. Matthews, and the contract revision you requested. She places the tray on his desk with practiced precision, her gaze momentarily catching the highlighted clauses scattered across the paperwork. For just an instant, her expression shifts, a micro-expression of concern that quickly disappears behind professional courtesy. John, turning from window. Maria, you've been with us for what, 3 years now? Maria, 3 years and 4 months, sir. John, in all that time, have you ever seen me hesitate on a business decision? Maria studies his face, the tension around his eyes, the way his fingers drum against his thigh. She recognizes the signs of a man wrestling with instincts his ambition wants to ignore. Maria, no, sir. You've always been decisive, John. Bitter laugh. Decisive, right. Sarah used to say that about me. Before she decided I was just absent. The mention of his estranged wife hangs in the air. Maria has witnessed the deterioration of John's marriage through overheard phone conversations, forgotten anniversary dinners, and the gradual disappearance of family photos from his desk. Maria, perhaps she meant you were focused on building something important. John, important? This deal could triple our market share overnight. Overnight, Maria. Do you understand what that means? He gestures toward the contract with an energy that seems forced, as if he's trying to convince himself as much as her. Maria, it means change, sir. Significant change. John, change. Success. Everything I've worked for. But his voice carries no joy, only the hollow resonance of a man who has repeated these words so often they've lost their meaning. Maria moves to refill his coffee cup, her presence steady and unobtrusive, yet somehow anchoring. Maria, Mr. Matthews, if I may, sometimes the most important decisions are the ones that feel the most uncertain. John looks at her sharply, perhaps seeing her, truly seeing her for the first time today. In her measured words, he glimpses something that his board meetings and investor calls have lacked: genuine concern without agenda. John, you think I should be uncertain? Maria, I think uncertainty means you're still listening to your instincts. The intercom buzzes, shattering the moment's intimacy. Secretary, VO. Mr. Matthews, the investors are here for the final review. John straightens his tie, transforming back into the CEO role like armor being donned. But Maria catches the slight tremor in his hands as he reaches for the contract. John, send them in. As Maria moves toward the door, she pauses, her hand on the handle. Maria, sir, that instinct you're feeling, it might be worth listening to. The small space carries the weight of careful maintenance, everything clean, organized, purposeful. Maria sits at her kitchen table, surrounded by photocopied documents she's gathered during her years of quiet observation. Her laptop, old but well-maintained, casts blue light across financial spreadsheets she's recreated from memory. The contrast is striking. This humble apartment housing analysis that would rival any Wall Street firm's due diligence. Maria, to herself, reading. Clause 17. Asset transfer contingencies. Her fingers trace the text with the same reverence a scholar might show an ancient manuscript. These weren't just legal terms, they were the architecture of deception, carefully constructed to appear beneficial while systematically dismantling everything John had built. She reaches for a worn leather portfolio, its edges softened by years of handling. Inside, faded business cards and certificates tell a different story. Maria Elena Santos, Senior Financial Analyst, Meridian Consulting Group, São Paulo. Flashback, INT. Corporate Boardroom, São Paulo. Day, 5 years ago. Maria, dressed in a sharp business suit, presents financial projections to a room of executives. Her voice carries authority, her analysis cutting through corporate jargon with surgical precision. Younger Maria. The subsidiary's books show deliberate misrepresentation of assets. If we proceed, we're not just complicit, we're the primary architects of fraud. But the room's atmosphere shifts. Whispered conversations, meaningful glances. The presentation that should have protected investors instead marked her for elimination. Back to present INT. Maria's apartment, continuous. Maria closes the portfolio, her jaw set with quiet determination. The woman who once walked corporate halls now moves through different spaces, but her ability to read between the lines remains razor-sharp. Maria. Not again. Never again. INT. Matthew's Tech Headquarters. John's office. Morning. Maria enters with her usual quiet efficiency, but today her movements carry subtle urgency. John stands at his desk, pen poised over the contract signature page. Maria, Mr. Matthews, before you sign, there's something you need to see. She approaches with a manila folder, her professional demeanor barely containing the storm of her discoveries. John glances up, irritated by the interruption. John, Maria, I appreciate your concern, but this deal has been vetted by our entire legal team. Maria, sir, with respect, your legal team didn't see what I've seen. She opens the folder, revealing her analysis, handwritten notes connecting dots that corporate lawyers had missed or ignored. Her finger points to specific clauses, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she's revealing. Maria, continuing, the subsidiary companies listed here, 3 of them don't exist. The asset guarantees in Section 12 directly contradict the liability transfers in Section 29, and the board composition changes. John, dismissive. Maria, you're a housekeeper. You dust furniture and organize files. You don't understand complex financial instruments. The words land like physical blows, but Maria's expression doesn't change. Years of being underestimated have taught her that dignity lies not in defending her credentials, but in the quality of her work. Maria, Mr. Matthews, when someone shows you who they are through their actions, believe them the first time. John, what's that supposed to mean? Maria, these investors have structured this deal so that within 18 months you'll own less than 30% of your own company. The subsidiary acquisitions they're promising, they'll be managed by shell companies that trace back to your primary competitors. She places a final document on his desk, an organizational chart showing the web of connections she's uncovered through patient research and her understanding of corporate architecture. Maria, continuing, you're not signing a partnership, sir. You're signing a transfer of ownership disguised as growth. John stares at the documents, his certainty beginning to fracture. But pride and pressure override instinct. John, even if you're right, which you're not, this deal represents 2 years of negotiations. I can't just walk away because my housekeeper has concerns. Maria, no, sir. You can't walk away because your housekeeper has concerns, but you could walk away because a financial analyst with 15 years of experience is trying to save your company. The admission hangs between them. Years of professional invisibility finally given voice. John looks at Maria as if seeing her for the first time, not as furniture in his corporate landscape, but as a person with depth, history, expertise. John, quietly, who are you? But before Maria can answer, his phone buzzes. The investors are waiting. The press conference is in 2 hours. The machinery of corporate momentum is too powerful to stop with whispered warnings and manila folders. Maria, someone who knows what it feels like to watch good people destroyed by their trust in the wrong hands. Geometric shadows fall across marble tables where fortunes are discussed in measured tones. Maria sits across from Robert Chen, 55, an investor whose careful demeanor speaks of survived corporate storms. Between them lies a manila envelope, unremarkable except for the quiet revolution it contains. Robert, your message mentioned Matthew's Tech. I confess curiosity about someone in your position reaching out regarding a deal of this magnitude. Maria's posture carries the authority of expertise learned through consequence. She slides the envelope across marble with deliberate precision. Maria, in my experience, Mr. Chen, the most dangerous deals appear too perfect to question. Robert opens the documents, his expression shifting as he processes organizational charts revealing systematic deception. Shell companies dissolve into Delaware addresses. Subsidiary relationships expose competitive acquisition disguised as partnership. Robert, studying papers. These subsidiaries, I was assured they were established entities. Maria too dissolved 3 months ago. The third exists only as registered paperwork. No employees, no assets, no operational history beyond legal fiction. The cafe's urbane rhythm continues, business meetings forming the city's negotiated soundtrack. At their table, truth exchanges hands between two professionals who understand integrity sometimes requires uncomfortable conversations. Robert, this level of research requires resources, connections. Maria, it requires understanding corporate architecture rather than accepting financial summaries. The timing wasn't coincidental. Your group was approached after Q3 earnings showed Matthew's Tech's Eastern market vulnerabilities. Her second folder reveals the careful orchestration behind seemingly organic business relationships. Robert's phone buzzes. His expression darkens reading internal communications. Robert, they're accelerating the press conference timeline. Maria, because extended scrutiny reveals what you're seeing. John Matthews is signing this deal not from sound business judgment, but because personal failures have compromised his professional instincts. The psychological accuracy cuts through corporate justification layers. Robert organizes documents with visible decision-making process. Robert, what do you want from me? Maria, be the voice of reason in a room where everyone else benefits from silence. John won't listen to his housekeeper, but he might hear an investor sharing his concerns. Robert, the press conference is in 90 minutes. Maria's expression carries quiet determination, someone who has calculated action's cost against silence's price. Maria, then we make sure it becomes an opportunity for transparency rather than deception. The room carries the weight of corporate theater, polished surfaces reflecting camera lights, journalists positioned with practiced expectation. John stands at the podium, contract pages spread before him like sacred texts awaiting consecration. His pen hovers, trembling almost imperceptibly. Behind him, investors arrange themselves in careful formation, their satisfied expressions betraying nothing of the systematic dismantling they've orchestrated. The very air seems charged with the tension of fortunes about to change hands. John, to the cameras, today marks a new chapter for Matthew's Tech, a partnership that will... The conference room doors burst open with sudden violence. Maria enters, her professional composure intact despite the urgency that propels her forward. In her hands, a folder containing the architecture of deception laid bare through patient investigation. Maria, Mr. Matthews, you need to see this before you sign anything. The room falls into cathedral silence. Cameras pivot, capturing the moment when corporate certainty meets unexpected intervention. John's face cycles through confusion, embarrassment, then something approaching recognition. Maria, continuing, approaching the podium. The subsidiary companies in Clause 17. They dissolved 3 months ago. The asset guarantees contradict the liability transfers. This isn't a partnership, it's a carefully constructed transfer of ownership. She places the folder on the podium with the same reverence she once showed presenting to São Paulo boardrooms. The documents spread across the contract pages like truth laid over fiction. John, quietly studying the papers. These organizational charts. How did you... Maria, because I know what systematic corporate dismantling looks like. I've seen good companies destroyed by trusting arrangements that benefit everyone except them. The revelation hangs in the air, years of professional invisibility finally given voice. Around the room, journalists sense the shift, the carefully choreographed performance becoming something far more authentic. John, his voice breaking slightly, you're telling me that everything I've worked for... Maria is about to be given away to people who have been positioning themselves for exactly this moment. In the quiet space between her words, John's world restructures itself. The pressure from investors, the promises of growth, the desperate need to salvage something from his failing personal life, all of it suddenly visible as the elaborate construction it had always been. John, to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I need a moment to review these new findings. But Robert Chen, who has been observing from the back of the room, steps forward. His presence commands attention without demand, the quiet authority of someone who has navigated corporate complexities long enough to recognize both predators and protectors. Robert John, as your primary investor, I share Ms. Santos's concerns. Perhaps we should postpone until these issues can be properly addressed. The other investors shift uncomfortably, their carefully constructed timeline beginning to unravel. In their subtle movement, Maria glimpses the choreography she has disrupted, the systematic approach to corporate acquisition disguised as partnership. John, looking directly at Maria, you knew. You tried to warn me, and Maria, you were protecting what you thought was best for your company, but sometimes protection requires listening to voices we haven't learned to value. John, to the cameras. This conference is postponed pending further review, as journalists file out and investors retreat to recalculate their strategies. John remains at the podium. The contract pages still spread before him, but now they appear as what they always were, documents designed to transfer rather than build. John, Maria, who are you really? Maria. Someone who believes that expertise exists in unexpected places and that dignity doesn't require recognition to have value.